200 people were accused of witchcraft and 20 people were executed for being witches. If you said you were innocent, you were found guilty and hanged. But if you confessed, even if it was a lie, asked for forgiveness and told on others, you were let go. The Sanderson sisters from Hocus Pocus were loosely based on the accused. This is a story of how a 12-year-old girl's tales started the Salem Witch Trials in 1692. Let's dive into this horrific time in story form. Sarah Goode was a 37-year-old woman living in Salem, Massachusetts. It was a grim life. You feared going hungry or even killed. Her face showed leathered lines, and her hair was gray and matted. She looked like she was 70 years old. Her life had not been easy. Her first husband left her with incredible debt when he passed away. When she married her second husband, William Goode, the debt was paid, but they were both so poor. The bond a husband and wife share was not in their marriage. One cold February afternoon, during the coldest winter Salem had seen, Sarah was resting against a building after she spent the entire morning going door to door begging for money. She was pregnant with her second child, and she was hungry. She blew her hot breath onto her fingers, trying to warm them up, wishing she was anywhere else. The townspeople thought she was a nuisance. Sarah heard someone approaching, so she took out her bag. "Please spare some change for a pregnant woman like me." The man looked at her with disgust and walked away. "I curse you and your family," Sarah whispered under her breath. She had become bitter over the years. That same night, a house belonging to Reverend Samuel Parris, a stern man, experienced something strange. His 9-year-old daughter Elizabeth and his 12-year-old niece Abigail Williams were sitting on Elizabeth's bed. A dull lamp cast eerie shadows as Abigail cracked an egg into a glass filled with water. She laughed. The superstition was, the way the egg settled in the glass of water would predict your future husband's profession. So if it settled looking like a pitchfork, your husband would be a farmer. "Shh, you're being too loud. Father will hear us," Elizabeth whispered. When Abigail cracked the egg into the glass of water, it took shape of a coffin. They both looked at each other with fear in their eyes, thinking that it predicted their death. The next day, Elizabeth and Abigail were sitting at the dining room table eating dinner when suddenly they felt as if they were being choked by invisible hands. Their bodies began to shake and twitch out of nowhere. Gasping for breath, Abigail went down onto the floor and hid underneath the table. Elizabeth followed. Their bodies still shaking, Abigail started to howl like a creature, and Elizabeth started to scream at the top of her lungs. She kept pointing in horror at the corner of the room, but nothing was there. Samuel and his wife didn't know what to do, so they sent the girls back to their rooms and later checked on them. They were worried about the girls, fearing for them, but they were also worried about what other people would say. So they kept the girls hidden inside the home, away from other eyes. Samuel instructed Tituba, an enslaved woman, to look after the girls. Tituba was close to Elizabeth, so she was already worried. She mixed up an herbal ointment and applied it to the girl's forehead, hoping that this was just a bad fever, but it didn't help. Elizabeth and Abigail's friends were experiencing the same strange behavior, their bodies twitching, shaking, moving uncontrollably, as if an invisible force was controlling them. 12 girls in total were behaving the same way. When rumors started floating around that the 2 girls might be bewitched, Samuel got angry. He went to the local doctor, an uneducated man named William Griggs, and on the same day, Griggs visited the home and examined the girls. Nothing out of the ordinary stood out to him. Physically, they seemed fine. No fever, nothing. He left the girls' room to find Samuel and approached him. "There's an evil hand at play, I tell you." Samuel, who was shocked at what he heard, stormed into the girls' room to ask them who was tormenting them, but they stayed silent. The following day, Samuel's neighbor, believing that the 2 girls were bewitched, told Tituba to make a witch's cake, to truly see if they were being tormented by witches. Tituba was instructed to collect the girls' urine, combine it with rye, and then bake it. After doing so, she fed the cake to the family dog, who was supposed to reveal the witch's name, but the test failed. Samuel, who knew the neighbor from his church, banned her from attending services, thinking that the test itself was some sort of witchcraft. One night, he saw Abigail and Elizabeth dancing in the woods. He again confronted them, demanding them to tell him who was behind their strange behavior. Abigail looked at Elizabeth, hesitant, but ushered Samuel over and in his ear whispered 3 names: Tituba, Sarah Goode, and Sarah Osborne. Osborne was a woman who married her servant and stole her children's inheritance when her first husband passed away. Not to mention, Samuel and his family didn't really like her. All 3 women were considered to be social deviants by the townspeople, who believed themselves to be worthy of respect, which couldn't be further from the truth. All 3 women were looked down upon by them. On February 29th, a warrant for their arrests was issued. Tituba was in the middle of cooking dinner when she was taken in. Sarah Goode was in the middle of begging an old woman for money when she was captured. And Sarah Osborne was terminally ill, lying in bed when men stormed her home. Sarah Goode was thrown into a cell with the others, hysterically crying her innocence. "I'm no witch. You can't lock me in here." All 3 women were waiting for their trial. The days went by and Sarah Goode began to panic. "I'm pregnant. I shouldn't be in here," she thought. Osborne, realizing that she was becoming more ill, started to cough up blood. Her chest started to hurt more and more. Tituba, who was terrified, put on a brave face. When trials finally started, Sarah Goode was the first to take the stand. "Why do you torment these poor children?" the judge asked Sarah. Confused and upset, she firmly told the judge that she was no witch, that she couldn't be. The judge looked at Sarah suspiciously, then called her husband to take the stand. When he asked William if he thought his wife was a witch, William's response broke Sarah's heart. "I say this with tears streaming down my face. She is the enemy of all that is good." Just then, a witness stood up in the courtroom explaining that she had proof that Sarah was indeed a witch. She reached into her bag and pulled out a broken knife, claiming that Sarah, somehow using magic, tried to stab her with it. But a man came forward from the crowd, revealing that the broken knife belonged to him, that he threw it away realizing it was broken. Instead of punishing the girl for her lies, the judge asked her to stick to the facts next time. At this time, Sarah Goode's panic grew, and she blurted out that Sarah Osborne was the one tormenting the girls, not her. But this didn't help Sarah. The judge sent her back to her jail cell and called on Sarah Osborne to take the stand next. She walked up looking pale and weak. Her condition was worsening and no one was providing her with any care. When the judge asked her the same question, she flatly responded that she was no witch. No one was satisfied with the answers. Tituba was the last one to take the stand that day, and what she revealed led the townspeople to believe that there weren't just 3 witches, that there were many, many more in Salem. The judge asked Tituba if she had anything new to say about the charges against her. She hesitated and then replied, "The devil himself came to me and bid me to serve him." The courtroom was silent. The first confession. "A man with white hair and a dark coat told me to hurt the children. If I did not, he threatened to kill me." Tituba told the court that she, Goode, and Osborne rode on sticks hurting the children of Salem together. "But it is not just us 3. We are everywhere." The room roared with shouting and whispers. So it was true all along. Witches roamed Salem. The judge asked Tituba if she knew anyone else, but she told the courtroom that the devil did not reveal any other names to her. "Can you tell us more?" Just then, Tituba told the courtroom that she had gone blind, that she could no longer see at that moment. The court, knowing she was valuable, kept her imprisoned in a separate cell, but she was no longer in danger of being executed. The jail cells were unbearable. Damp, dark, filled with rats and sewage, Sarah and Osborne waited for what would happen to them. When the verdict came in, both Sarah Goode and Sarah Osborne were convicted of witchcraft and were set to be executed. The day after her conviction, Sarah Osborne died in her cell. She was too sick, and without proper treatment, the virus affecting her lungs took over her body. Sarah Goode was angry and worried about her baby. Anytime someone walked by her jail cell, she pleaded with them to not execute her, to let her go. Hearing the commotion, the judge set her execution date to after she delivered the baby. She felt relief that maybe her baby would be okay. This bought her time. The moment Tituba confessed, a witch hunt spread throughout the village. Everyone was on edge. A reverend who was part of the witch hunt went to go see Abigail Williams to get more information from her. When he knocked on the door, Abigail gladly let him in and sat him down. He wanted more names. With excitement, Abigail revealed that a 70-year-old woman named Rebecca Nurse tried to force her to sign her name in the Book of the Devil when she was coming home from church last week. Of course, she told him that she refused. The Reverend, showing disgust, wrote the poor woman's name down. Then Abigail accused a woman named Bridget Bishop of torturing her and her friends, using her spirit to physically hurt them. Without asking for proof, the Reverend took her word and left. The next day during church services, Abigail stood up, disrupting everyone, shrieking hysterically, and pointing at a woman sitting in a pew. The woman's name was Martha Corey. Abigail screamed that she just saw Martha Corey's spirit leave her body right then and there. Martha assumed that she would have people defending her, so she laughed nervously. But they all believed Abigail, and she was arrested. Abigail accused the first man of witchcraft too. John Proctor and his wife Elizabeth owned a small tavern just outside of Salem. When they didn't join the witch hunt, they were targeted. In July, Sarah Goode delivered her baby in the damp, dark cell. She named her daughter Mercy. Sarah's other daughter, Dorothy, was also by her side at this point because she too confessed to witchcraft when men approached her, telling them that she learned it from her mother. She was only 6 years old. Sarah felt no joy. She knew she was going to be hanged soon. She held her baby, surrounded by sewage, hoping and praying that her baby would survive. This was no place for a newborn. Her own health was waning. She was weak. Days after delivering her baby, Sarah woke up one morning and reached out for her child. But when she touched her baby's skin, she knew the worst had come. Mercy had passed away in the middle of the night due to malnutrition. Grief-stricken, all Sarah could do was finally weep. As for her other daughter, Dorothy, she was showing signs of severe mental trauma being locked up. On July 19th, Sarah, with her hands bound, was led out of her prison cell. The time had come. She was taken to Proctor's Ledge, where she was set to be hanged. Sarah walked up the hill, listening to the sounds of twigs and loose dirt beneath her feet, for this was the last time she'd hear them. A minister that was part of the witch hunt, named Nicholas Noy, demanded her confession. He and many believed that a false confession, then asking for forgiveness, was far greater than the truth. Sarah held on to her innocence even then and stayed silent. She had lived a difficult life, a life that could be spared if only she confessed to something she didn't do. But she showed no weakness. She walked onto the platform, and as the rope was placed around her neck, the minister again demanded for her confession. Sarah, whose head hung low, slowly looked up at the minister and spoke her last words. "You are a liar. I am no more a witch than you are a wizard, and if you take my life, God will give you blood to drink." In 1717, years after the trials had ended, Reverend Nicholas Noy, the man who demanded Sarah's confession before hanging her, suffered an internal hemorrhage and died choking on his own blood. Abigail Williams, a 12-year-old girl, accused 57 people in total of witchcraft. Bridget Bishop was the first to be hanged, followed by Sarah Goode. 14 women and 6 men were executed, including John Proctor. One man, named Giles Corey, who was Martha Corey's stubborn husband, was executed by heavy boulders being placed on top of his body. His last words were "more weight." Those that didn't speak out against others were looked at suspiciously. In May 1693, after Sir William Phipps, who was governor at the time, received notice that his own wife was being accused of witchcraft, he pardoned the accused and released the prisoners waiting for their trial. This ultimately ended the Salem Witch Trials a year after they started. Around the same time, Tituba came forward, revealing that she was forced into her confession. How do you defend a lie that can destroy your life when the only defense you have is your word? In 1970, a doctor came out with a theory explaining the girl's strange behavior. Ergot, which is a fungus that infects rye, which was heavily used at the time, causes hallucinations, convulsions, and muscle spasms. The cold winters and the damp, muggy springs were the perfect environment for this fungus, but this is just a theory. A 12-year-old girl and her friends caused so many lives to be destroyed. And today, a memorial stands in Salem for all the lives lost. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up or maybe even subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.